Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when death is the enemy, revenge might be the only way forward. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, if you like how we do things around here, I will assume that you do, because, quite frankly, you're listening. So please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on the social media, as the kids call it. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Threads, the Blue Sky, for all sorts of fun updates. I lose track. There's so many. But we're in the seats. But finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please come by and visit us over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it, and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness, come on by and pay us a visit. It's time to go down that video-on-demand highway once more and take a look at a new film available now called Resurrection Road, and it's the story of an elite squad of 6 black soldiers led by an ex-slave named Barabbas, who've been sent on a suicide mission to infiltrate a Confederate fort deep in the Arkansas woods and blow up its long-range guns, altering the course of the Civil War. This is just a down and dirty, gritty, violent war movie, action movie, whatever you want to call it. It makes no allusions to being anything but just tons and tons of fun. And it stars the late great Michael Madsen, Malcolm Goodwin, Randy Wayne. It's another good piece of independent cinema. And we had the unique chance of talking with the writer-director Ashley Cahill about his inspiration for the story and wanting to tell it and making it, and just sort of the challenges there. And we had a good talk. But as we always say here at In the Seats, when you go through the video-on-demand roads, you find some gems once in a while, and I think this is one of them. If you just want like an action slash horror movie, down and dirty, it's about 80 minutes, so it's a quick ride, but I think you'll enjoy it. But first, enjoy our talk with Ashley Cahill, the writer-director of Resurrection Road, which is on video-on-demand platforms now, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one. So, Ashley, obviously, man, first off, just thank you for the time today. I really appreciate this. And I mean,
Of course.
congrats on the movie. It's intense. I really dug it.
Thank you very much.
What, I guess, was the intent on, I guess, the inspiration for telling this kind of story, which we've kind of seen before, but from this perspective?
Very much so. Well, okay. I pro I don't normally do a lot of interviews, and I'm always very honest with them, and I always get in trouble. But I'm just gonna be honest because I was honest with the last person that interviewed me. The truth of the matter is that this wasn't my original idea. So
Okay.
to answer your question on what made you decide to do it this way, I didn't really. I had a different film that involved a lot of the same characters, uh, Barabbas and mainly a lot of the same black Yankee soldiers, and even actually, a lot of the Confederates, although they weren't vampires. And it was a different movie with a different plot.
Uh-huh.
And that's the film I wrote. And then that film got picked up, and it looked like it was going to be greenlit, and it was all looking exciting. And then somewhere along the line, somebody suggested that it should be a little bit more genre and that we should have vampires in it, um, which did not exist in my script. And so I had to go in quite a make a left off a cliff and build a bridge so that I don't fall off the cliff. And so I rewrote the film because the first two films I'd done, I had produced and I'd raised the money myself, and they were, under $500,000 each. I mean, the
Right.
first one was under 100,000, the second one was under $500,000, and this one was in the region of one.
Right.
So I wanted to make the next step up on the career ladder. So I thought, well, I've got the bit between my teeth. You want vampires? I'll write fucking vampires. So I did, but it wasn't my initial idea to just do what you could argue is a loosely inspired remake of From Dusk Till Dawn,
Right.
or if I made it in another year's time, Sinners. It is kind of a weird coincidence that Sinners is coming out at the same time. Yeah, I made this in 2023. I'm slightly like, it's kind of, I guess it was a prescient idea after all, but not mine. So
Sometimes I guess this is proof in the pudding. Some nights notes from the studio aren't a bad thing.
correct. No, exactly. Yeah, it's especially if it's the only way that your film's going to get made, then they're
Exactly.
always a good thing.
But I mean, something I really appreciated about was just you shot the hell out of it. Like it looks really fantastic. I mean, obviously you're working on a certain degree of a budget. Like how did you sort of, I guess, decide on, I guess, sort of the grimy visual aesthetic of the movie?
Yeah. So just to give you an idea, the budget was very low. We had sets built. We had 4 sets built. Then we filmed in a fort, but we could only film there for 3 hours. All that night stuff. It was like 2 nights of 3 hours. It was a fucking nightmare. And the whole film was 17 days, so no time at all. So I'm glad that you thought we shot the shit out of it, because we did. The aesthetic, basically, me and Sam Calvin, the DP, we watched a bunch of different types of films, or we had seen. We didn't actually sit. We didn't have time to sit through them, but we both referenced and put on a board photographs from, and most of them were westerns.
Mm,
So most of the time we thought we were making a western. That was what was in our head. We're like, look, we're going to make a western until we really reach the fort, and once we reach the fort part, we're making a Dracula film, not just a vampire film. We literally were like, we're making Dracula or Nosferatu. We went back to the Herzog movie. Like I've read a few reviews which bring up the spotlight and the unrealistic lighting of the night scenes and stuff, right? And I've said this to other people. They could have said that the film's the greatest film they'd ever seen, and they can also tell me it's the worst film they've ever seen. It was 2 years ago, and I don't care either way. But I will say this. They are misunderstanding the lighting then. Of course the lighting's unrealistic. Obviously, Sam's not a fucking moron. He knew he was doing unrealistic lighting. We were trying to light it like Werner Herzog's Nosferatu. And maybe some of the people complaining about the lighting should watch Nosferatu
hello, yeah.
and wonder where an enormous spotlight of white light coming around a mountain is coming from in the 1800s. Clearly, it's made up. But we were like, exactly, if he can get away with it, so can we. Turns out we can't, because we live in a blogging age, and we get in trouble for every what we think is as a clever surrealistic idea. But that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to be somewhat surrealistic once we got into the horror. We basically thought there are no rules, and we can have crazy lighting, and rooms don't have to match. We're in a vampire's lair, and they can manipulate things.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what our thought was. Seems that a lot of people, it's the one thing that people are complaining about that I'm like, really? That's what you're complaining
Oh,
about?
fuck
But
them. My God.
yeah,
Seriously, because I mean, honestly, in watching it, I was like, I really appreciated just and I mean, this all almost sound horrible, but I appreciated the lack of exposition because sometimes we can get almost a little overtly political, this, that, and the other. It's like, no, these black soldiers are fucked, and they have to go to this. They have to go to this lair to find this whatever the hell's going on. Period.
right.
That's
The
the point.
MacGuffin. Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. I don't think we need to get to know them all. I wasn't making the Wild Bunch.
Yeah.
I was making a very, very low budget, somewhat schlocky horror movie. And we were trying to do it like 1970s horror films. Like, for the first half, our influences were Western, and most of the lighting was Western, most of the compositions were Western, mainly American Westerns. We tried not to do too much spaghetti Westerns because everyone copies those. But once we got into horror, like I said, Nosferatu's a big one, Coppola's Dracula, I didn't realize how good the sets were going to be. And then the sets were so good, I really regretted that I hadn't decided to do everything on a set. And I mean the woods as well. I would have done the whole film like Dracula. I would have done the whole film practical and on sets. The CGI, for example, is not my doing. That was added. I originally had everything blowing up off camera and just had that light coming through the light that
Right,
I
right.
have a moment of where he lights a cigar, which I took from Heather's, that he can light a
Yeah,
cigar
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
an explosion. Right. So I just had that, and then it was suggested, which a suggestion from up on high is not a suggestion, that we have CGI explosions, and so we had that. I actually think it takes away from the film because so much of the film is practical that I like that more. But whatever, it's a matter of opinion. Who cares? But our influences once we got into horror were like Hammer horror and all those kinds of like films that are a little bit tongue in cheek, a little bit more fun, a little bit more Evil Dead. You know, I'm not
We know what's
100%
coming, but we're going to go
convinced
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to
But
me
anyway,
about, I guess you're finding your cast because, again, with these movies, I always appreciate it when actors are willing to sort of get physical and get in the mud, and we definitely felt that on this one.
yeah, we were really lucky. We had a great cast. We had a great crew. We had a great post special effects aside, only because it was too cheap, and that's why I think
Right?
we
Yeah, yeah.
shouldn't have gone that way. But our editor was great. Our composer was great. I I complain about crew because I work in such low budgets very often. I've just made another movie, and we had pretty good crew, but they had to bring in some people that were very wet behind the ears. There was no one wet behind the ears on this movie. Everyone was fantastic. I can't sing their praises enough. And that goes for the cast as well. Everyone on the cast is great. The guy who played Washington, Oki, can't remember his last name off the top of my head. That's so rude. But he was like, what a find. He was great. Chula was great. Obviously, Malcolm Goodwin's great. Obviously, Michael Madsen was great, but we expected them to be great. But everyone else was so great. I really was lucky, and some of them were very last minute. We had very little pre-production time because to make it for a tax incentive, it got greenlit, but then to make the deadline, we had to start shooting. And it was all like 3 weeks, I think, was our entire pre-production. I
Mm.
was only in Oklahoma for 2 weeks before we started shooting. That includes building of sets, costumes, and casting. None of that had been done. So it's really amazing how quickly everything came together and the cast we ended up with, considering how short our casting time period was. And shout out to a lot of the producers brought in a lot of that cast. It wasn't all like me.
Right.
Very little of it was me, in fact.
I've always
So
found there's a certain degree
yeah.
of charm in being able to shoot genre sort of down and dirty and gritty. Because I mean, obviously, if you're trying to make a rom-com for like 250,000 or sort of some period drama for 500,000, you're going to run into moments where it feels awkward and hokey. But when you're doing something like this, it always kind of feels earned and genuine. What is it about sort of genre and working on the cheap that seem to go together?
Wow, that's a good question. My God, maybe I should ask you that question. Um, you know, well, you say genre, and uh, I I suspect you're specifically meaning horror and
Yes, but I
maybe
mean, I
action.
can I can I can expand that, but I would say, yeah, definitely leaning more towards horror
Yeah, because I'm not sure westerns necessarily work that well there, or the
or
music wouldn't
sci-fi or anything
work
like
that
that.
well.
Yeah,
Sci-fi. But I know what you mean by the genre film. B pictures, exploitation, okay, and horror. And it's true. And ironically, and I don't think it matters if I plug the other film because it's a lot of the same producers. So I don't think they'll be like, hey, you're meant to be plugging this film. But I just made another horror film in Mississippi, and it's a slasher film.
Right.
And ironically, the low budget, I think, hurt us a little bit on Resurrection Road, whereas the low budget won't hurt us at all on this other one because it's a slasher film set today.
Right.
It's so part of the audiences don't care at all when they're low budget. And like, oh wow, you did that kind of cool, crazy shot handheld and through the room, and it's a little bumpy, but that's okay. And you lost focus for a minute, that's okay. Whereas this film was a little bit bigger because it's Civil War and it's a Western and then a vampire film. It needed to be, I think it still works, but I wish it was just slightly glossier. Just gave me just 500,000 more, just
Right.
4 days. Just give me another week, like, and it's funny, but you're right. What is it about, the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's not such a tiny budget, but it's a pretty small budget,
Yeah.
or let alone the Evil Dead films or anything like that. Like, why does it work with those? I don't know. I can't really answer that question, but it's a good question.
It's kind of like, to me, it's the spirit of kind of not giving a fuck and just putting
Yeah.
something out there on the screen and just sort of let it happen.
I wonder if it's even more deep rooted than that. I wonder if it goes back to the fact that most horrors were B pictures in the old days.
Yeah.
They were PA films. They were the horror films in the 30s. It doesn't count for the 20s, it doesn't count for the silent era. But once we got the sound, horror films are, Frankenstein stuff. Those are not the films that the studios are proud of or putting out. Those are the Universal pictures, right?
Yeah.
Paramount and MGM and so on. So I think it's always been expected to be a lower kind of level, at which point people are used to it. It wasn't until way later that films like, The Exorcist came out and suddenly people are like, wait, an Alien. And you're like, you mean you can make horrors with big budgets that are really well made? That's kind of a new phenomenon. Until then, it was, I don't know, Cat People, and I Walked with a Zombie, Night of the Living Dead. They might be important and they might have a message, but they were pretty schlocky, let alone the Hammer horrors and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Uh,
There's always been art in horror, but it hasn't had that kind of sheen until the 70s. You're right. When with Exorcist and Alien, to be able to sort of give it that next level of, oh wait, this is almost an art house movie, but it's a horror movie. It's an alien movie.
100%. They're trying to win an Oscar with it. And then suddenly Stanley Kubrick's making a horror, and it's
Yeah.
like, Stanley Kubrick's version of a horror is pretty different from Assault on Precinct 13 or whatever. It's like his budgets and his level of commitment is way higher. So you're suddenly making Barry Lyndon and now you're making The Shining. It's not quite even Psycho, because I don't think of Hitchcock as really a horror filmmaker, but clearly Psycho is a horror. That's a TV crew
Yeah.
making a tiny movie on the backlot, which is clearly the backlot. He was not using his regular crew. He was using his Alfred Hitchcock Presents crew in black and white when he'd already switched to color, in full screen, not widescreen. It's kind of he's making a B picture. It just happens to be a masterpiece, but it's, even he was like, doesn't need to be Vertigo.
And you know what, man? I'm kind of glad you brought up Assault on Precinct 13 because to me, Resurrection Road really almost kind of has that vibe of overachieving in many ways and just sort of giving us that sort of straightforward, balls to the wall kind of narrative. And I mean, it's my kind of movie. And I mean, honestly, I'm glad it's on VOD now for people to see. But I mean, just Ashley, man, thank you for the work and just thank you for the time today. Keep it up.
Oh, thank you. Is that it? We're
Yeah,
done
good to
with-
go.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
You're very
Okay.
welcome, man. Thanks again for the time. I appreciate you.
Oh yeah, no, sure. Thank you very much. And I will just say, John Carpenter was obviously those kinds of John Carpenter.
Right, yeah.
Was a big part of us trying to make this. Like Sam and I kept thinking about, once we get later, it should just be fun, like a John Carpenter movie. Just like I wish Kurt Russell was in it. I wish I had few more days, and I wish I had slightly less CGI. But other than that, but that's kind of, I wanted it to really be like a 1980s schlocky, fun horror film that people were laughing at. That's why we left in the very obviously bad stamping on the head, for
Yes.
example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dummy. We do a jump cut. We're not trying to pretend. We did that on purpose because it's like I want the audience to laugh and cheer at that moment.
No,
So
this
I'm glad.
movie has that sort of 78 to 82 kind of vibe. And I mean, doing that, it's such a love letter to that lo-fi genre. And I mean, I absolutely loved it. But just again, Ashley, congrats on the work and thank you for the time, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I hope to see you again on the next movie.
You got it, man. Absolutely. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right, thank you very much.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.